It was a busier Saturday night than usual for the dimly lit tavern that faced the docks of Nephron Harbor. A boisterous conglomeration of sailors, women of the evening, and giant gray-skinned drogs filled the chairs and bar stools in the Silver Dolphin, dropping pieces of food from their tables and dripping ale from their chins. The shouting, singing, and cursing was as thick as the cigarette and pipe smoke in the air. Despite the fire burning in the hearth and the kerosene lanterns glowing in the windows, there was a gloomy, dense atmosphere that saturated the tavern and all its alcoves, a darkness that no light could pierce. The Dolphin was a tough place. It had to be. The economic depression that had befallen Harbor Town had closed many of the other food and drink establishments around it. The desperate and the destitute robbed the inns, stealing the food rather than paying for it, and put them out of business. In order to keep the Silver Dolphin secure and open, the proprietor had to offer something those other places did not. A red-headed barmaid wove through the crowded tables with 3 pewter mugs in each fist, holding them close to her plentiful bosom to avoid spilling their frothy contents. "Hey, darling, we need another round," came the shout from one table. "Where's the roast beef we ordered?" from another table. "Ale, wench!" from a trio of drogs, their voices the consistency of gravel. "Wait your turn," the barmaid yelled back. "Can't you see I'm just one woman?" "And a damn fine one," someone said from behind as he pinched her rear. The unexpected touch startled her, and she rained ale on the head of a patron seated to her right. "Hey, you dumb bitch, watch what you're doing," said the disgruntled patron as he wiped his eyes. "Put ale in my mug, not in my face." The barmaid gave him a friendly smile. "I'm sorry, sir. Your next ale will be on me." He smiled, revealing crooked yellow teeth. "Well, thanks, dear. That's mighty nice of you." "You mind if I put these mugs down for a second?" "Not at all," he replied. The barmaid placed her 6 mugs in front of him on his table. She turned on her heel to face the person who dealt the unwelcome touch. He was a husky bald man with a smug grin, and without hesitation, she slapped him across the face. The crisp, loud noise grabbed the attention of the surrounding customers. "The next time you grab me like that, you're going to be thrown out of here." The man laughed, along with his gruff companions. "Who's going to throw me out?" "I will." The figure of a young man stepped out of a dark corner. He had a thick black hair and a chiseled nose and dark brown eyes. As the tavern's noise diminished, the table of ruffians erupted in wild laughter. "You're gonna throw me out? You? Kid, I'm at least twice your weight. You couldn't handle me." "I can't." As the barmaid watched his every move, the young man produced a stack of bills from his pocket. "I got 150 bills here that say I can." He slapped the pile of money on the table, all showing in blue and silver ink the crest of Clan Nephron in denominations of 10 and 20. "If you're so sure you can beat me, make it interesting." The bald man and his friend stopped laughing. He examined the money on his table, his mouth open. "Where'd you get all this money?" he asked. "We ain't seen that much cash in a week. Between me and my pals, we ain't got more than 50. The Silver Dolphin fell into a total hush. "I didn't mean put up your own money," the young man said, then looked around at all the other customers staring back at him. "Hey, who wants to bet on a fight?" Once again, the Dolphin was abuzz with noise. "Looks like we have some takers," the young man said to his opponent. Elson Tanneman walked along the dark cobblestone pier avenue of Harbor Town. Off to his left the waters of Nephron Harbor, rendered nearly invisible by the moonless night, lapped at the piers and docked ships. On his right was an ominous, virtually lifeless row of buildings, their lights extinguished and abandoned by those who once frequented them. Their doors were boarded, many of their windows were broken. It angered him how the Depression had sucked the vitality out of Harbor Town, largely because he knew it didn't have to be that way. If Clan Nephron cared more about the livelihoods of its people than the reach of its power, these unfortunate times could have been avoided. His livelihood especially suffered. The schooners and merchantmen he passed weren't going anywhere. Many were put up for sale by their owners. The dangers in the great ocean were killing harbor town's once thriving sea industry. He was lucky to still have a shipyard. Actually, luck had very little to do with it. Subdued voices came from a condemned building ahead of him. Tanneman remembered the place. It used to belong to a fishmonger. Peering through one of the grimy windows, he saw a lit candle on the bare wooden floor. What he first thought were 5 corpses surrounding the flame, he quickly realized were living bodies but unable to move or to care to move. A long pipe lay near the candle, ashes spilled onto the floor. Mushak addicts. Nature could not have spread the native narcotic weed through Nephron faster than the drogs who peddled it to the suddenly impoverished whites. Some only needed ale or whiskey to forget their misfortunes. Others needed something stronger to forget themselves entirely. Tanneman moved past the makeshift Mushak den in search of a tavern he had not been to in years. He thought he remembered where it was, but everything looked different. The gentle sea breeze of summer swirled around him. At least one bit of Harbor Town's charm remained. He heard a woman screaming somewhere in the slums beyond the harbor and before the bluffs that rose to meet Nephron's industrial zone. Tanneman caught himself wondering why she screamed. God only knows why, he thought, then decided it would be better not to think about it at all. Suddenly, above his head swung the shingle engraved with the shape of a large dolphin fish, colored white. It was supposed to be silver. At one time it was, but old Butch obviously never had time to touch it up. The paint had faded in the years of salty sea air. The Silver Dolphin. To his delight, the tavern was still open. He could hear talking coming from the inside, but it was dying down quickly. He wondered how could it get quiet without anyone leaving, until he remembered what Butch had set up in his basement. Tanneman smiled. Perhaps he would see the person he wanted to see. For days he had heard stories of a kid who fought for money. He was only 17, but he could still trounce whoever challenged him. He had to see the boy for himself. Someone that young, with that much spunk, could be useful to him. The inside of the Dolphin was nearly empty. Only one short, plump barmaid and a few dedicated drinkers remained. To the right, near the bar, was the door to the basement. Tanneman put his ear to the door and heard the sound of people joined together in heated shouting, as though they were the spectators to some intense event. He knew the door would be locked, so he didn't bother trying to open it. He knocked. A narrow slit opened at eye level, and a pair of yellow eyeballs stared at him harshly. "Who are you?" came an unwelcome voice from behind the door. "I'm a guest," Tanneman replied. "We don't get guests." "What's going on down there?" "Who wants to know?" "Tell Butch he's about to make Elson Tanneman a very impatient man." "Yeah, whatever." The slit clamped shut. Tanneman waited 10 seconds, then decided to knock again. Before his knuckles hit the door, it swung open. "All right, Captain Tanneman, you can come in," said a portly, stubbly man with yellow eyeballs. "We gotta watch who comes down here. We don't need a snitch blowing the top off our racket." "Butch knows my feelings about the law," Tanneman said as he descended the stairs to enraged shouting below. He rounded the dark corner to see a crowd of almost 50 crazed people surrounding a homemade arena made from ship rigging tied around a barrel at each of its 4 corners. Inside the ring were 2 shirtless men squared off, fists up, searching for a sign of vulnerability in the eyes and motions of the other. while one contestant was a large man, clearly over 200 pounds, with thick, hairy arms. The other was much smaller and younger, a mop of black hair hanging over a pair of alert brown eyes. Tanneman found Butch standing behind a table elevated by a group of wooden crates. Butch noticed Tanneman approaching. He hadn't seen the sea captain in years, but this was no time for a warm greeting. "Nelson! Come up here, quick!" Tanneman quickly hopped onto the crates and stood beside Butch. It was an excellent vantage point. He could see above all the heads of the spectators, save for a few drogs that remained mostly still and silent as the fight unfolded. "You've got to see this kid in action!" Butch yelled over the noise. "Well, I've heard things," Tanneman replied. "Who's betting on him?" "That's the beauty of it," Butch said, grinning. "He's had a 6-fight winning streak, and people still think he's going down in the next one. Almost everyone in the house is betting against him, but not me. I know better. Watch him. He's just getting started." The kid took a step back and deliberately lowered his guard. The larger man, sensing an opportunity to deliver a one-punch knockout, threw a right cross with his ape-like arm, just as his opponent expected. With his weight on his pivot foot, the kid was able to safely duck the blow. He took a step forward and put himself well inside his opponent's reach. He landed a painfully accurate uppercut between the rib cage and the girdle of fat, pushing all the air out of his opponent's lungs. The big man doubled over, stunned by his inability to breathe. The only fight he wanted to win became the one for air, and his fists dropped down to his chest, exposing his face. Then came the right cross to the temple. Before he could fall, the left hook to his jaw sent blood, saliva, and 2 of his teeth flying into the crowd. The fight ended too quickly. Screams of excitement turned to cries of disbelief. Butch leapt from the crates and entered the ring. He raised the victor's left arm in the air. "The winner is Skipper!" The crowd moaned and hissed at the outcome. Skipper went to the corner where Claire, the barmaid, waited for him. With one hand she raised his other arm in triumph, while her other hand hugged him around his chest. Skipper took from her the money he first used to lure his vanquished opponent. He walked over to the bloody, beaten man still gasping for air, his compatriots seething over the humiliating loss. Skipper dumped the money onto his chest. "You can save the $150. That's pocket change for me," he said. "Take it and stay out of the Silver Dolphin. Ladies don't deserve to be manhandled by the likes of you." The man was helped to his feet by his friends, his legs still wobbly from the skipper's blows to his head. They left, and the crowd quietly left after them, casting freakish glances at Skipper as he stood with the barmaid and Butch in the center of the ring. The spectators cleared until the only one remaining was Elson Tanneman.